Hello, everyone. Welcome back again. This is another podcast from XR Today. My name is Cureton, Senior Journalist for XR Today, and we are always bringing you the latest and greatest from the VR, AR, and MR industries. So today we have on yet another guest. We have on Chris Guerin, founder and Chief Executive of Xpllore. Now, did I make sure I pronounced that last name correctly?
Fairly close, Guerin. And we even pronounce it differently in our own family, so you're not too bad there.
Okay, thanks. All right. So we've been chatting a little bit. We had a bit of a pre-game before actually speaking today, and I wanted to talk more about Xpllore and what it has to offer because it claims to be, the solution for the next century. So there's going to be quite some interesting insights and details about that. Before we do that, though, could you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and career?
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, my name's Chris Guerin. I'm founder and CEO of Xpllore. My background is actually I'm a trained CGI artist. So I used to be behind the machine creating the content, and my career started originally at Rolls-Royce, creating jet engine training. So my history of showing my age now around 23, 24 years has been right back creating educational content, but for training on how to fix jet engines. And I did that for over a decade. And then as I got to the point of seeing that I was starting to revisit the engines and the content I'd created 10 years earlier, I decided it was time now to leave and just really branch out into basically creating content for myself, which expanded me out from just doing engineering then. So started to work with my own company, Short CGI, of which we worked with lots of companies, whether it was construction, engineering, automotive, oil and gas, all the different sort of energy sectors and things like that. And started that about 2008. And so I've really seen the development of CGI and then the delivery mechanisms and things like that. And about 4 or 5 years ago, that's when we started to really see the reborn version of VR. We know VR has been around for a long time, but really it sort of came back to us again in about 2016. And I really saw the vision for how that could really change what we were doing as content creators at the time.
Right. Yeah, and your solution, I would say, is actually planning to make those changes in the industry, and I see that there's quite a few things that we can look at today. So the first of that is the cloud streaming service. So Xpllore is a major cloud streaming service. It's won several awards for its innovations, and we can chat a bit about that. But in your opinion, what I would like to ask is, how does it plan to transform the current and upcoming XR technologies in the sector? Like, what does it aim to accomplish?
Yeah, well, I think the challenge was back in 2016, we were hearing the hype of VR, and then a few years later you were hearing the demise of VR and everybody assuming, well, it hasn't taken off in the games industry, it's got no purpose and nobody wants to use it. And that's incorrect, because it was just being really looked at in an old-fashioned way of, well, gamers want to spend 8 to 10 hours sat in front of an Xbox or a PlayStation, and they weren't really adopting this in the games world. What I saw it was a tool that could be used across lots of verticals. And being somebody who's been in the industry now for nearly 25 years, I've seen people going from using a viewfoil in a classroom to high-end CGI animation. And I saw the future was going to be this immersive world of, as they now call the metaverse, and creating content that would connect people, but really allow people to do things they can't actually do in the real world safely or on a 2D world that we're doing now on video. So I saw this was a new platform that would sit in between the two. And that's where really we started to look at what were the upsides and downsides of this new world of XR. And a lot of the research I did, talking to some of the big blue chip clients we were working with, was first of all was the hardware. We were having to set up workstations in a single room in the back of a department in a big organization with lots of sensors and cables, and it was very daunting for people. So I really sat down and said, well, what are what would be the moving points for these people to start using VR? And what we said really is if we could simplify it as easy as we do now. We pick a mobile telephone up, we pick up, a tablet, and anybody without any computer knowledge from any age group usually can pick those up and with very little time can click an application and access, whether it's using the internet or whether it's using something to go shopping. So we said if we could start simplifying XR in that manner, then that would be a real game changer in this world, and take it from what is a geeky sort of setup and gaming setup to be, mainly mainstream. And then we started to say, really, what was the other barriers? And the content was the main barrier, because it's a bit of an old-fashioned analogy, but if we just had a DVD player with 4 DVDs watching a TV, that would get very boring. It'd just become a plastic box in the corner of your room. You need content, and so many organizations went out and bought VR, played on a few of the applications, which 9 out of 10 would be entertainment and gaming, wouldn't be relevant to their organization, and then would actually put it back in the store cupboard because there was no relevance to that piece of what was just a piece of plastic hardware. So we started to say, really, we need to build an ecosystem, now known as a metaverse, that would allow developers to create content and distribute that content in a much easier and simpler fashion than they are doing at the moment. At the moment, a single developer right through to a studio of 100, developers will create content, and they have really 2 options. They have an option to upload to a store, but majority of those applications are focused on entertainment. So it doesn't suit if you're working, let's say, in health and life science or energy or defense or any of those sort of serious, more enterprise subjects. So that doesn't really suit them. So the next option is to go on site with the actual client themselves. And you could be a developer in the US working with a UK company. And by doing that, it becomes very problematic because you're suddenly having to get on planes, fly halfway across the world to go into an organization, to deploy it onto a machine where really limited amounts of people in that organization will even know it exists because it's on a single machine. So all those barriers were being placed, and we said we really need to simplify this. And that's where we came up with the idea of Xpllore and having a platform which is more similar to Netflix. So as we would have done in the past, you go into Blockbusters, you would have got your films. Now we wouldn't even consider doing that. It's such an old-fashioned way of thinking. And there's no reason why VR shouldn't be deployed in the same manner. Between me and you now, we could literally pick up any of our devices of choice and access the same film and watch that content. And you could have libraries of content, whether it's horror right through to comedy, and that would give access to you wherever you are on the globe. And that's where we said if we could do the same for the XR community and allow developers to create their content, upload it to the cloud, and then their clients could then access that, and they could access it whether they've got a site in the UK, a site in the US or China, anywhere across the globe, and gives them easy access. It simplifies the creation of that content because I worked in a large organization, and what you find is it gets doubled up because those people in that part of the business don't know it exists in this part of the business. So it just gives a simplified place to place it. The way I sort of describe it really is at the moment, if you want to do a bit of social media or understanding from an enterprise level, you would literally go into LinkedIn and find an organization or find somebody in that sector. And that's what we want to be. We want to be that sort of enterprise version of the metaverse, really.
I had a chance to play around with a few of the demos of it, and I saw that it does have that Netflixy feel. I like that very much. And so I think it would be very useful for enterprises, seeking out numerous solutions under one roof. And I think that's going to pay off quite well in the future. I wanted to ask you this. We wanted to talk about some of the top partner firms that you work with and how they are fostering the development of the ecosystem that you're building. Which kind of companies have you worked with? Which ones have you collaborated with, and so on?
Yeah, well, we've been really lucky. We've worked with possibly the global leaders in each of their fields, really. I mean, this all started out as an idea, really, and you can sit there and come up with an idea, but without some strong partners or a very large bank account like an Elon Musk to just throw lots of money at these things, you really do need to find strong partners and not reinvent the wheel across the board. So that's where the concept of, as I've just described, was there, but how do we move this into a real product? So we started working with NVIDIA possibly about 4 years ago now, there and thereabouts, and they were developing an actual piece of software called Cloud XR, which today in the XR world has become quite prominent with a lot of developers, but we were really right in at the early stage before it was even mentioned to the open market. And we were working with a team of developers in the UK, and that's when we started to say, well, we need to figure out, can we even do this? Can we put content in the cloud, and how do we get it from the cloud into a headset or onto a device? So we started working with them in the background without, many people knowing about it. And then, being really fortunate, we were based where they were about to launch a Vodafone innovation 5G innovation hub at MediaCity in the UK. And from there, we were given the access to one of three opportunities. And Vodafone wanted to test their brand new 5G antenna that was the first in the UK. And they wanted some user cases. And one was immersive technologies, one was automotive, and one was AI. So we were in a perfect position to say, well, we're there to start testing with this. So working with NVIDIA and Vodafone, we built what is called a multi-access edge computer with the help of Vodafone. We designed that, and we then installed some of the software we wanted to. We then started working with VMware, another huge software developer, and really we created a unique platform with lots and lots of other partners to develop what we needed. And from there, we started testing back in 2019, and that's when really we started to really forge forward and saying this is possible. 2020, we were just about to do the final testing, just when things started to lock down in the country. But from that happening, we realised that actually we could actually start helping a real project in the UK, and that was we started to work with Vodafone to deliver a healthcare application to help about training people about viruses. It wasn't a planned product. It was just a coincidence. It happened at that particular moment in time. And that's by the August of that year, 2020, we'd actually streamed a healthcare training application for Coventry University across Vodafone's 5G standalone network. And NVIDIA gave us the rubber stamp that we'd had 4 world's firsts. Nobody else on the globe had actually streamed across 5G and 5G standalone from what was a high-end cloud compute right through to a Oculus Quest at the time. And that allowed us not only to use a mobile device, but actually allow ultra high-end VR, because the processing wasn't being done directly on the device, which will only allow a lower latency, a lower quality product. It actually allowed us to give the developers the opportunity to add simulations and really high-end visual effects that you wouldn't even get directly on, a PC with a tethered headset. So you were getting best of both worlds, really. You were getting ultra high-end VR directly to a mobile device, and that really, really started to show everybody that we're working with that there's more than one benefit of just having it in the cloud. And those were some of the world's first we started with. And that really flowed into some of the other partners then. We started to work with Qualcomm, who are the developers of the chips inside the headsets. And really that was about us getting insights into where the technology is going, so we could have a heads up on what we could produce for now into the future. And then really the biggest partner of this from that was AWS, because for us to offer a full cloud solution, you need a global cloud provider, and AWS is an obvious one. So we worked on a pilot program with Vodafone and AWS on how we deliver the content from their cloud platforms. And we've been working with them ever since, and we're still working with them now to deliver what we're planning to launch at the end of this year. And then we've got other partners like the headset manufacturers. We don't want to just lock into one particular headset manufacturer. We will be offering headsets with our platform, but we want to be able to say, well, if you already own a Pico headset or an Oculus Quest or a HTC Focus, one of these, headsets or any of the others that might come ahead, we want to be available that we can actually say, will you access it via those? And we're also happy to let people get into the platform using, a laptop, a tablet, and maybe in the future, having an application they can download to their Xbox or PlayStation. We want to really open it up to allow people to get in there and test these things out. And that's what we're building with some of these partners as we speak about.
Yeah, and you mentioned something very interesting that I think a lot of people are looking at in the industry. That is the combination of 5G and mobile edge computing, which is going to be a game changer, especially for developing these cloud solutions. And I think that that's going to, give some great benefits to, I guess, either future competitors, especially for your solution as well, and bringing XR to many different people.
No, definitely, yeah. It's the thing with all of this is what we need to do is we know there's always a timeline with any new technology, and by having this new technology, it's a challenge to get this to the wider market. But sometimes you don't want to push it to the wider market until the cost is right, until the content is right, and we're now just seeing where the last 2 years, I think that has actually pushed our market probably 3 to 5 years ahead of where it would have been. And I believe that because the confidence of really now people wanting to work from home, partially go into an office or a university as a student. And I feel that this technology will allow people to do that hybrid of the in-between as well. Because sometimes you don't always just want to do a video call, and sometimes you don't want to have to get in your car or on a train to go, and even, larger on a plane. Sometimes you do want that nice hybrid of in-between. And the mobile technologies and 5G is going to allow that to spread even wider afield.
Absolutely. Yeah, and speaking of that, I wanted to ask you maybe something about this. We talk about using this as a solution for everyday people as well as enterprises especially, and how would you actually monetize this for the people collaborating on the platform?
Yeah, well, what we're doing is at the moment, right as we speak, is we're actually reaching out to developers, whether you, like I said before, whether it's a one person developing in their home, or whether it's right through to studios with 50, 10, 100 sort of developers. What we're trying to do is reach out at the moment, because the idea is we're not there to develop the content. There are lots of people out there developing platforms that is bespoke around their own content. But what we're realizing is we want this to be an open place for everybody to be able to go to and say, I'm going to go to Xpllore to find the content as an end user. If you're an organization, that's where you store your content. But really, it starts with the developers. So we're reaching out now to developers across any vertical, as I've said, healthcare right through to oil and gas, defense, any of those subject matters that I deem as not entertainment, let's say. That's probably the best way of looking at it. We're not saying there won't be any gamified type of training and learning and collaboration content. But what we're saying is if you've got that content, we want to be the curators of that content. Place that in our platform. We're not going to charge those developers to put this content in there. And we're going to give them the freedom to choose whether that content is there for the open market to access, or whether they're building something bespoke for an end client like a Rolls-Royce or a BA Systems or one of these large organizations that only that organization can get access to. But by doing that, that gives them a central location to store that content, and then they can then give that access to their actual organization they're creating that for, whether it's universities or enterprise. And then the end user has got a really simplified way of accessing that content through whatever means of device. Now, the monetization for us at this moment in time, when we launch the full subscription, will be the streaming of that. So the end developer isn't getting charged for that at this point. What we're saying is we're actually giving the mechanism, the highway to get that content. And that's where at the moment we've been looking at offering a tiered level of subscription for different amounts of data streaming. And also we've been asked, could we include maybe hardware in this, certainly for the universities that we're talking to at the moment, where they'd like that in with the subscription, where we can just deliver a headset with the actual application already on there. So there's all sorts. And then in the future, there will be lots and lots of different levels of things we're going to add in there that will help developers create much better content and get feedback from the actual end user to create much more immersive content that suits the end user. And that will come in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's going to help like quite a bit. And I wanted to ask you this. So you spoke about those different collaborative partners and the different people that you were meeting while you were in Media City UK, and they're helping to like provide some of the solutions, or at least leading you to some of the solutions that you're creating now. So how did the facility help to bring about some of those operations, and how have your relationships with Media City UK helped to foster this while working there? And what kind of important tools do they provide for you?
Yeah, well, I think for me, I mean, some of the partners that I've mentioned that I'll go into, it was really important to be in the right location. In the past, some of my businesses have been more rural, near where I live, and we moved over to Media City. And what we found is by being in sort of incubator hubs for any startup or any business, it's great to be around like-minded people, because you haven't got large teams to start with. So you need advice from lots and lots of other people around. And also you can give advice to others. So being in a space like that at Media City, we were in and around other startups who were asking for advice, vice versa, we were asking them. But being in that location, some of these larger organisations like Vodafone, have these innovation hubs within inside these hubs. So from that point, we were introduced to Vodafone. We got access that just wouldn't have been possible if we tried picking the telephone up and tried figuring out who do you call in these organisations. So this is where those things are really helping, and where they're starting to really help in today's market at the moment is we're not all in these offices as much as we were. But what we're finding is by going in, we're having sort of quality conversations when we can. And at the moment, there's new programs being developed with AWS, Unity, and various other partners in this building. And that's given us early stage access to some of these raw talent that are coming out of these organisations and academies. That allows us to maybe develop where we just couldn't afford the high-end developers and those, at this moment in time while we're still building our organisation. So that's where it's really helping us at the moment, is that ecosystem. And I would say as well, what's really important for the larger organisations is they must see the real importance of working with innovation companies that might be 1, 2, 3 or 4 people in those companies, because we can really, really help them upscale in this latest technology in these larger organisations that sometimes can take a little bit longer for them to be able to adopt.
Oh, you froze a bit. I think it was Breeze.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll mark at 20 minutes that there was a bit of a freeze, 22 minutes. And then we'll do a clip here and just pick right up where we left off. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. So yeah, I was going to ask you also, so you were speaking to us about Media City and how it was helping you and how it's helping to facilitate a lot of these solutions. And I wanted to know if you had anything else that you wanted to add, basically, about the importance of cloud streaming, your solution, and the wonderful partnerships that you have helped forge along the way.
Yeah, well, I think the really important is just getting this access, is getting people really, really bought into the benefits. And I think the benefits will really be shown when people start using VR. And I think, and AR as well. We're not just, we are across the board here. I think at the moment, a lot of people see videos until you put a headset on or until you use the right sort of applications that suit you. It's a case of, it doesn't really, really immerse people to understand those benefits. And we've started to see those benefits already at the university we worked with. And those universities have implemented people going in the headset. They've streamed live lessons on Teams and Zoom so that they can be inclusive of students who are not on campus. And this is where the real benefits are going to show across organisations. It's going to allow a much wider audience of training and teaching, and allow people as well into a wider audience where they may be really struggling. We noticed some training where there was a college recently where they had students where there was 3,000 volts running through a real machine on the side of the wall in the classroom, and that lecturer had to spend 20 minutes with each student, because if there'd been an accident, if he wasn't watching them, you can imagine what the outcome would be. By creating a virtual version of that, he could have the entire classroom all actually getting familiar with that piece of equipment and get themselves maybe 80% competent. And by being 80% competent, that means he can spend slightly less time actually on the real product itself, which means he can get the students flowing through and training them in a much quicker way. And those are the kind of benefits across the board, whether it's healthcare, like I said, and those sort of dangerous subjects, right through to things that we've probably not even thought of yet. Simple projects that don't always require somebody to spend time. They can actually just learn themselves. And that's where I think XR and streaming will just be giving it to a much wider audience than it already is at the moment. So yeah, I think it's a really exciting time now. I think over the next few years, it's just really getting the universities, the enterprise really bought into testing this out and really focusing in. This isn't a niche thing. This will be what I believe will be the next internet of the next few decades. And it is just a case of starting the process now of understanding the benefits of what we're delivering.
Absolutely. And you touched on some very good subjects about how XR is able to help train and facilitate a lot of, quantifiable results for students. So, for example, a 75% increase in retention rates, and compared to 10% with traditional methods. And then we have the fact that this is an on-demand solution where people can use this to train at will, regardless of the profession or the industry that they're working in. Like pilots are using this, medical professionals, everyday students, university people are also doing this as well. So I think that there's going to be a lot of room for growth for this type of solution. So I'm wishing you all the best on that.
Yeah.
Okay,
no,
great. Excellent conversation today. Once again, we have been speaking to Chris Guerin, founder and Chief Executive of Xpllore. I'm Damon Cureton, Senior Journalist for XR Today. And if you'd like to continue following conversations like this with us, please join the XR News hashtag on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Once again, we've been speaking today. Thanks so much for joining us and have a wonderful time. Bye now.